With the absolute greatest respect to him, I low-key remember Gehamat Shibasaki as a meme player. We don't have heaps of them in rugby league, but it's a big thing in soccer. Your Antonys, your Loris Kariuses, and for the real OGs out there, your Lord Bentners. These are players who, while they had bags of talent, somehow managed to fall short of their potential in just the most iconic ways. And so when this kid came along at the Broncos with curly hair, a goatee, and a name like Shibasaki, him fading into obscurity across a couple of clubs brought the inevitable memification. But this year, all of that was put firmly to bed.
Much pressure on the markers. Harvey Norman replay. Great dummy half work. He went one way and come back. To Shibasaki. He's on the double. He's got it. And lovely pass, Shibasaki.
Second carry of the set, offloading. Something that we've seen this season. On show.
This is one of the greatest rags to riches stories in rugby league, and it is getting nowhere near the attention it deserves. This is the story of Gehamat Shibasaki's revival. At the start of this season, this was Shibasaki's career so far. Debuted at age 20 for the Broncos back in 2018, coming along at the same time as Kotoni Staggs. And while the Broncos rated him highly, extending him and giving him 12 appearances in the following season, a 3-year offer from the Newcastle Knights was too good to turn down, and he got an early release. But unfortunately for him, it was from there that things really started to cool down. The first year at Newcastle wasn't that bad. He started in round 1, played 11 games that season, and was dropped towards the back end of the year. But after playing rounds 3, 4, and 5 the following season, his career at the Knights was over, and he was released at the end of the season. At a moment like that, he found his career at a real crossroads. 24 years old, and without that much NRL interest, he actually had a very brief stint in Japanese rugby, playing 8 games over there, before returning to his native Townsville on a train and trial deal with the Cowboys. And while he did own a contract with them in 2023, only 2 appearances came his way, and he was released at the end of the season. If I'm honest, that was the point at which I personally wrote off Shibasaki. A talented guy, no doubt, but sometimes it just doesn't work out in the NRL. He signed with the Townsville Blackhawks, and me and many others just thought that he'd play out his career as a very high-quality reserve grader. They were affiliated with the Rabbitohs, and he did get 1 game for them while they were absolutely smashed by injury, but it did seem to be the one last little glimpse that we'd see of him at the top level. He'd gone from being a junior Kangaroo, from being a Broncos under-20 best back, Queensland under-18s and under-20s rep, to being the guy who you kind of think about every now and then and go, remember him? He was meant to be a star. But at the start of the 2025 season, with Shibasaki's NRL career hanging by a thread, one man decided to give him an opportunity. Michael Maguire knows the kind of players who respond to his coaching. He's a tough coach. I mean, if you've got the mental strength to push through what he puts you through, you can thrive under his tutelage. But if you let talent make up for a lack of dedication, you won't last long in a Madge side. Seeing a 27-year-old journeyman ask for train and trial deals, Madge knew that he had someone who had desire. At that age, most players who hadn't made it yet would fade out of the limelight and get a normal job. But instead, this guy was still chasing the dream. With the center pairing of Kotoni Staggs and Selwyn Cobbo, both players who at the time really struggled for consistency, Madge took a chance that it would be worthwhile putting a hard worker just underneath them, putting pressure on them all through the preseason. A train and trial deal was struck, and Shibasaki was a Bronco once more. He left his family in Townsville, his partner and his newborn baby, to chase one last crack at the big time. Preseason rolls around, and the story goes that from the very first day of fitness testing, Shibasaki was a guy who was truly setting the standards. Madge, he took notice. This is the part of the story that we don't see on the highlight reels. It's easy to romanticize the end products of his journey this year, but it all starts at this point. On those hot, horrible preseason days in Brisbane, underneath the sun when everyone's dying, and for some reason the guy who probably should be the first to give up just doesn't. And after earning starting spots in both of the preseason challenge matches, to the surprise of pretty much the entire rugby league world, Shibasaki starts for the Broncos in round 1. And truth be told, he never looked back. This was an outside back who at the start of the season had as many NRL tries as he had seasons played in the NRL. Think about that. I mean, during his first stint at the Broncos, he went 13 games and didn't score a single try. Compare that to the first 15 games of this stint and he had 12 tries. He'd gone from a fringe depth signing to one of Brisbane's genuine most potent attacking weapons in the space of half a season. And then the phone call came. Less than a year removed from grinding away in Queensland Cup, Shibasaki was called up to play in the most intense arena in Australian sport, State of Origin. At 27 years old, he was called in to make his debut for the Queensland Maroons in a decider in Sydney. And, as we all know, he won. You have to remember the emotional context here. I mean, less than 2 years earlier, he'd basically slipped out of the NRL system through the back door. No fanfare, no farewell, just released at season's end and off into obscurity. Now, he was wearing maroon in an Origin decider and delivering on the potential that so many people said he had back in the day. If winning that State of Origin decider was to be the peak of his career, I'm sure he would have taken that. I, on the other hand, handled the aftermath of that game with slightly different emotions.
As you guys know, I'm a generally pretty level-headed person. I don't get emotional about a lot of stuff, but what the damn hell was that?
As we all know though, Shibasaki was far from done. His highest highs were still ahead of him, but unfortunately, so was his lowest low. Off the back of his Origin triumph, he returned to a Broncos side who was sitting 5th, but who were only 2 wins ahead of the 10th placed Sharks. They were on a 4-game winning streak, but even then, their 9-7 record hardly reflected the best that roster could offer. Luckily for them, they continued to hit some serious form towards the back end of the season. While the 4th place Warriors were stumbling under a heavy injury toll, the Broncos won 5 of their 7 games heading into the final round of the season, a game which was at home against the Melbourne Storm. The equation was simple. Win, and they'd make the top 4. Lose, and they'd face having to do something that no one before them had ever done. Come from the bottom half of the top 8 to try and win the premiership. But on the week of the game, Shibasaki's comeback toll from heaven hit a major roadblock.
Breaking news this afternoon, Broncos' top 4 hopes rocked as Gehamat Shibasaki has been dropped after a boozy night out.
Big story, Peter Bedell's broken this afternoon on the Courier Mail website. Apparently, Gehamat has gone out on the drink on Sunday night in Brisbane. He's had a big night out. He's turned up to training on Monday morning under the weather, and Madge has made the decision to drop him.
It's obviously disappointing. I'm not going to go away from that. There's things that go on in the clubs. We're just living by the standards and the expectations of each other, and that's just part of the journey. The boys from day one when I first walked in, talked about who we want to be, and every now and then one of our own, might go a bit sideways, and he's got to get back on track and put his head down and work.
And I guess going forward, depending on how the Broncos go, firstly on Thursday night against the Storm, but heading into the semis, does it cost this bloke who has been one of the season's great comeback stories his spot for the finals?
When you've worked so hard to become part of a team who are aiming to achieve something incredible, to let your teammates down at a hurdle like that has got to be one of the worst things a player can feel. And for 80 minutes of that game, he had to sit there and watch it all take place, thinking about what he'd done and why he wasn't on that field. Not only that, but he saw his team thrive without it. Brisbane got a convincing 30-14 win over the Storm. And I remember sitting there watching that game thinking for the very first time that season, damn, Brisbane are genuine premiership contenders.
Like any lesson, make a mistake, don't do it again. I'm a leader in this club now, so I shouldn't have done what I did, and now I get back to the training paddock and lead with my actions with training. I think there's a bigger picture involved, and that's to win a grand final, so yeah, that's the main focus.
And, well, we all know what happened next.
Pakes is waiting. Smoothie's there at first receiver. It goes to Carrigan. It comes out to Ben Hunt. It goes to Walton. Gehamat Shibasaki. They go bang. Ben Hunt. Hunt from inside 40. Ben Hunt hit it well. He's celebrating. It hit the post. It goes over. Oh, so smooth. Runs it over to nobody. Goes around his leg. It's on its way. He's got it. He's got it. Brisbane front. Backward. He's gone backwards. He's gone backwards. Is he going to get it? Edwards. Edwards. Inside. The Brisbane Broncos are about to go back to the NRL Grand Final. Redemption for Brisbane.
The run that the Broncos went on to win the grand final was generational. They beat the minor premiers in arguably the NRL's toughest away day in a cold night in Canberra in what was one of the greatest games that this sport has ever seen. Then they went back home and ended the dynasty of the 4-time premiership winning Penrith Panthers, coming back from 14-0 down at halftime to win the game with a sideline conversion in the final 5 minutes. All that leading into an NRL grand final against the most perennially successful team in the NRL era, and once again coming back from double digits down at halftime to claim their first premiership in nearly 2 decades. And for Shibasaki, he had completed the ascent once more. From an NRL journeyman discarded by the Knights and the Cowboys to a scorer of a double in an NRL grand final and a premiership winner with the Brisbane Broncos. It was an ascent that was enough to earn him a starting spot for Australia in their 3-0 victory in the Ashes tour in England. When it came to rugby league, Gehamat Shibasaki was now among the best in the country. They say that sports are a form of soap opera, and I will admit that at times it definitely generates narratives and storylines that are so good they almost seem made up. Shibasaki's story this year is a prime example of that. In writing this video and reflecting on it, I truly think that it is one of the greatest individual stories in global sport. And it's a fresh reminder not to rush to dismiss guys. As I said, I was guilty of it too, but what Shibasaki has done this year has proven that as an athlete, you're never completely written off. The right coach, the right system, and the right teammates can always get the best out of you. And that is something that I love about our game. If you enjoyed this story, we're trying to hit 10k subscribers by the end of the year, so if you haven't already, it would be massively appreciated. And if you want to see more player stories like this in the future, let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.